Hello everyone, welcome to Cynical Studios Open Studios Night, January 2022. Happy New Year to everybody. It's a new year, and here at Cynical Studios we love sharing what we're passionate about. So I wanted to give you guys a little more information about the organization as we start off the new year. Cynical Studios, for those of you who don't know or who are joining us for the first time, is a nonprofit dedicated to education. We do all kinds of programming in three main approaches to working with glass. We have a Glassblowing Studio, a Flameworking Studio, and a Kiln Forming Studio. We offer open enrollment, public programming to anyone interested. We also do programming, outreach programming in the community with a bunch of great partners. For those of you who know who we are, I want to thank you for your continued support. A portion of this presentation was brought to you by the Arts Council of Fort Worth. Actually, it's called Arts Fort Worth now. I want to thank them for their continued support. I want to thank the Texas Commission on the Arts for their support. There's some great foundations in our community, the R4 Foundation and the J.E.S. Edwards Foundation, and everybody out there who donates to us. We really, really, truly appreciate your support. If you are interested in helping us move forward, there's lots of ways that you can contribute. You can come take classes, you can make a donation, you can volunteer with the organization. But like I said, we are glass makers in three disciplines. We offer open enrollment classes in glass blowing, one-time workshops, extended curriculum. The facility is public access, so if you know what you're doing or if you become infatuated like we are, you can use this studio just like it was your own. So there's lots of information on our website, so check that out. We are going to do some glass blowing demonstrations. This is a bit of a joint collaborative effort. The team, Tatar Siegel, Kevin McGehee, myself, Clifton Crawford, Gene Fernandez is behind the camera.
Hi everyone.
Heidi Childers is on the computer, and Blake Bowles is helping to also produce the event. So I want to thank them for their effort tonight. So tonight we're going to do a combination of a glass blowing demonstration that began in the kiln forming process. And so for those of you who don't know, in glass blowing we process the raw material into a puddle in the furnace, and that's where we begin. In flame-worked glass, we start with rods and tubes of glass, and we introduce it to a flame, a very hot torch, and we can get it hot and melted. In kiln forming, we put the pattern and the design in an oven and heat it up and fuse it together. So for tonight's demonstration, we've prepared some pieces by fusing them. This is a Bullseye Glass. That's a manufacturer that makes a wide variety of glass. We are a distributor. Are we not a distributor? But we are dedicated to using Bullseye Glass in our kiln forming programming. And so Gene has fused several great patterns, and we're going to roll those up onto a pipe and close that off and blow a bubble. So this is a bit of a collaborative approach to working by using the kiln forming studio and then using the glass blowing studio. There's lots of ways to make connections in this industry, and there's lots of ways to do things and to bring these different disciplines together. And so here at Cynical Studios, we're dedicated to helping everybody understand that, elevating people's understanding of glass art as a creative medium. And then we also do programming in health and wellness. So we use this as a tool to help people heal or to find an outlet for some of that creative juice that helps them to feel better and to express themselves. So again, thank you all for joining us tonight. We're going to do a quick little walk through the studio, and I'll kind of introduce the three different studios, and then we'll reconvene into the Glassblowing Studio and start the demonstration. Gene, you have anything to add?
No. We're excited for another year of this.
Thank you guys all for joining us. Thank you for your continued support, and I hope you guys enjoy this demonstration.
Awesome.
Follow me. So this is the Glassblowing Studio. We've got Blake Bowles, Kevin McGehee, and Tatar Siegel on the pipe. And they're preparing a collar to roll this up. This is a kind of a multi-use room. This is the Flameworking Studio where we can work in front of the torches, as I described earlier, with rods and tubes of glass to get things hot. A lot of beadwork, a lot of small-scale sculptural things. You can't blow large vessels, you just need a large torch. Over here we have the shop. It's all kind of compressed into our little Texas glass station. So we have lap grinders and engraving, sandblasting, diamond cutting tools. So we can do most everything. Polishing arbors. So in the kiln forming studio, we can apply all kinds of pattern and design and fuse it together in the ovens, which is what we've done to start this demonstration. So I'm going to jump in here, and I'm going to hand this mic off to Blake, and we're going to get this thing started.
All right, you guys, so just to recap, this is our open studio night. We do this once a month on the second Friday of every month. Today we're going to be doing some bullseye roll-ups, and it looks like Tatara is starting us off. So she's got a little bit of bullseye glass, which is different from what we usually use in the studio. She's got some of that on a blowpipe, and they're going to roll up these panels on that color of glass.
Yeah, I'm gonna be quick. So going for one.
I'm gonna hand this off to Blake, and he's gonna take over from here.
All right, how's it going, guys? We are live. SiNaCa Studios. Open Studios 2022. All right. So right now, Tatara has a bit of clear glass. Now this is not the type of glass that comes out of our furnace. This is bullseye glass. So we're doing a little bit of a different demonstration tonight. So Clifton has a sheet of glass that was prepared in the kiln studio. This is a different formula of glass that we normally use in this studio. So we can't mix our glass from the furnace in this glass. So we have to use all this same formula of glass, like I said, that's usually used in the kiln forming studio. So right now Clifton is flashing. He's keeping this plate warm. In a few moments, once it's up to temperature, Tatara is going to use this clear collar of glass to roll up this sheet. We'll get a closer look at this maybe.
No, it's still there. It's still there.
So you can see there are two planes of colored glass. I believe it's black glass, right?
Yes.
And then in the middle is actually pulled cane. Now, not the same type of cane that we would pull in this studio. That type of cane was pulled directly from the kiln. So that type of kiln is a vitrograph kiln. So that kiln has a little hole in the bottom. Essentially, they get the glass hot, it drips out, making a nice solid cane of glass. I have a few examples here, if you can see. A couple of samples of that cane glass that we're going to see in the middle here. Pardon?
You want me to help guide it around to you like I did last time, or?
Sorry. So we're warming up the plate. Tatara is keeping that collar nice and warm. have this plate partially rolled up on that collar. And now we're going to do a series of reheats to bring this flat plate together on both ends, forming a cylinder first. Little wicker brush to make sure that there's no little bits of kiln that can possibly get stuck.
Not moving the same. Flip. Okay. Not moving the same at all. The other one was so soft. So soft. Flip. Yeah. Flip. Flip. Beat.
Right.
Yeah, clear is very soft. Very. Yeah. And all the transparent sections. Yeah. No things are really stiff. Flip. 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 Flip.
So you can see Tatara's trying to bring that first end closest to the collar together first,
Flip.
and then bring the rest of the seam together.
Flip. One more heat.
What's interesting is, again, this is a different formula of glass, so it's going to heat up and move a little bit different than the glass that we're used to. So it's kind of a fun little challenge.
Flip. Flip.
All right. So we've got the seam together. Now we're going to take a few more reheats to really melt that seam in.
Something harder, boy.
All right. So you can see the start of this cylinder we have here. Come over and use the Marver Table to cool and shape, redefine this kind of cylinder setup. We can use a propane oxygen torch to spot heat in one area. Inherently, the glass closest to the pipe, the steel, is generally going to be a little bit cooler. So sometimes we build heat in the back because it's a little harder to get heat built up back there, especially in a furnace like this. So the reheating furnace or glory hole, there's no material in there. This is just to get the glass hot again so that we can rework it. Now you'll notice that not a lot of time is spent outside of the reheating chamber. If this glass goes underneath a certain temperature, maybe around 1,000 degrees, it might crack. Now, of course, we don't have to worry about that at this point because things are well above 1,000 degrees. You can see it glowing right now. Again, building some heat in that back half. But I think eventually what will happen is the end furthest off the end of the pipe will be closed off, and then we'll have a bubble more or less that we can inflate and shape as needed. But most of the time when we work in this studio, 9 times out of 10, we're thinking about working from the pipe out, from the steel out. So we're making sure all that area near the steel is the way we like it, working our way out to the end, usually the last step. The tool that Tatara is using right now is one of our most used tools, called the Marver Table, M-A-R-V-E-R. Now Tatara is using a tool called the Jacks to kind of just put a little pressure on the outside.
So the last one, Gene, I sealed it up by just heating and using the paper. So I didn't want to waste because we don't have those strips of clear. But I think on this one, I'm going to jack it.
Bring it down to paper and see if they need just get a tiny little button on it, you know, and not waste much.
Yeah.
Just a little button that would really bring it to a point.
At this point, Tatara has to be careful not to turn too quickly, or centrifugal force could pull out our cylinder to a little bit of a flared lip. So we'll use a tool, it's just a folded wet newspaper to cool that exterior and make sure that that lip, that area furthest away from the steel, doesn't flare out wide as it starts to heat up and as we're turning the pipe. So most of this piece right now is looking red-orange. That's just the heat. The colored areas that you see, the two areas of color, will be black with a nice window of transparent cane with kind of a linear pattern going in between the two areas of black.
Come on, clear. Don't be fussy.
So a piece like this, a lot of the time is not only spent, making the piece right now, making the actual shape, but there was quite a bit of time going into making the actual pattern and making the actual plate before ever even thinking about getting it hot. This is not a general practice that we do here, right? Normally, we're taking glass out of the furnace that's already hot at 2100 and adding small amounts of dense color to that clear glass. And basically, the thickness and the amount of material that we have is based on what we start with. If we want more material, we don't really have a way to add any more. We can't go into the furnace and dip up and add a second layer. That glass is not compatible with this glass, so it wouldn't survive. It would absolutely crack. So we're very, very careful about what glass is added to this piece. It has to all be the same formula. So you notice that there hasn't been any blowing yet. Well, we don't have a closed end yet. We are on a blowpipe. It is hollow. But right now, if we blew through the pipe, the air would just go right through. So we're shaping it. Eventually, I believe we'll close that end off. Then we can actually inflate as needed. But we want to make sure the rest of that shape is really the way we like it before we close that end off. Again, this tool is just a folded wet newspaper. It's been soaked in water for a little bit. The idea with tools like this that are soaked in water, we don't want to burn the material, whether it's wood or paper, too much. We want it to glide on a layer of steam. So the paper is a nice tool, one of the newest tools in our arsenal. We have a few other steel tools. Back to the biggest steel tool, the Marver Table. Tara's doing an excellent job of keeping this piece nice and centered to the pipe. Most of the time when we're blowing glass, that's kind of what we're thinking about, keeping things centered. Not always, it depends. Beautiful night tonight. Nice 70-degree weather here in Texas, Fort Worth, Texas, January. I think by now we've almost got that hole closed off, as you can see. So now we can start to shape and maybe add some air in this thing to change the shape. I think are we going for a vase shape? What kind of shape are we going for?
With that base, we'll go.
All right. Sometimes we base our design on how the glass feels like it's going to move, especially in this case, because this isn't something that we do all the time. This is kind of a special demonstration. Okay, I don't know if you guys heard that, but basically Tatara is being very deliberate about keeping the wall thickness of this piece very much the same. It theoretically started all the same because it was fused flat. Essentially, we made a puddle of glass in a kiln, right? Then let it cool. Now we have a sheet. And I'm sure she's dealing with, you know, the different colors in there, probably heating up and moving at different rates. One move that glass artists like to do is get it hot and drop it and stretch it out. Well, if we do that, it might get a little too thin, so. So now we're hooked up. So So right now Clifton is hooked up to a blow hose, adding some air as needed.
We've talked before about all sorts of studs. I took it to a 400 and I scrubbed it with a toothbrush, Martin Buddha style.
Mm-hmm.
To get.
I wonder if it's just not hot enough and I didn't dump it in. Oh, this, yeah. I mean, it's there. You can see it. It looks like it's visual, but
So now we're all kind of looking at the seam where the two ends came together. Tatara's making sure that that area is, well, as seamless visually as we can, right? There's always going to be some type of evidence of where those pieces came together, but the more we can alleviate that visually, the better. Again, Clifton hooked up to the blow hose, providing air as needed. Nice, slow and steady. We don't want too much of this glass to get too thin on us too quickly. So Tatara was using what we call the fluffy torch to spot heat in one area. It's another one of our torches. We can localize heat in one area, rather to warm up an area or maybe to let another area cool off. Clifton's hooked up the blow hose, blowing lightly. See this thing changing shape. Excellent. Again, using another torch. This one is a propane and oxygen torch, again, to spot heat in one area. Eventually, in this process, we need to remove this piece from the steel, right? And usually what needs to be done is some type of constriction line. We call it a jack line. Needs to be made in order to remove this piece from the pipe eventually. So Tatara is spot heating that area near the pipe, with thoughts of getting a nice constriction line made in that area fairly soon. We don't want to go too far without doing that. So now Tatara has grabbed the jacks again to start that constriction line. Clifton is using a wooden paddle to shield Tatara from the heat. Can get a pretty toasty spot, especially since we have to linger here for a while, as you can tell, to really get that constriction line made. Very important part of the process. Otherwise, we don't get to keep what we make, right? We need to get it off here eventually so that it can be placed into an oven and cooled overnight. So now we have the constriction made. We might define it a little bit further just to really ensure that that will break. So the part that we're addressing right now will be the lip of the piece, so the opening of the vessel. Clifton has a solid rod with a little bit of clear glass on the end, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna pick up another piece of billet and I'm gonna make a cookie foot.
Okay.
Got some bullseye black. powder, and I'm going to coat it in this so we can cut off this cookie, because these billets got a bunch of bubbles in them.
Okay.
So we're going to do a cookie foot with bullseye powder.
So that'll be the glass used for the foot. Now, like I said before, we have plenty of glass on hand in the furnace here, but we're not using that glass. We're using a different formula. So each piece that we get hot tonight was placed into a kiln first, reheated, and then melted, you know, to make the feet or the punty. Just some more blowing and reshaping before that foot is attached. So the next aspect, what we call a cookie foot, is going to be added to the bottom of this vessel. That's just basically a little pedestal that it can sit on, its own little pedestal, so that it'll sit nice and flat and a little bit elevated off whatever surface it's placed on. So like I said, Clifton has a little bit of clear bullseye glass, and he is going to add some black powder, the same formula of glass. So this bowl, I believe, or vessel, not sure on the shape, final shape, will have kind of a foot to sit on. Again, blowing is needed to get that really round shape. Again, using that folded wet newspaper to cool certain areas, mostly that tip. Let's take a little.
It's all the light color, light blue. Yeah. But the black? She told me clear was we first saw it. What? Never mention to me about painting next time. Those paints
All right. So we're back to the foot again. So Clifton's going to warm up that bit of glass hot enough so that he can stick some more material to it. Like I said, in this case, some color, some black powder, so that it matches the rest of the vessel, which will also be black.
Don't be shy. Big cheeks. Get those chipmunk cheeks going. So hard, bud. There we go.
If you've taken a class with us before in the Glassblowing Studio, you've probably heard us talk about how we blow glass. Most of the time, we are using the pressure from our cheeks to inflate, right? Not using the volume of our lungs. Big misconception about glass blowers is that we have amazing lungs. Well, maybe some of us, but not super dependent on lung power. Really, it's all in the cheeks. So now we're letting the glass cool off slightly. What you need? Good. So the piece that Clifton picked up was just a piece of clear bullseye glass. This looks like a big chunk, basically. So that was picked up right at 1050 degrees, 1050 Fahrenheit. So now we're going to take a couple minutes to just melt that down. And like I said, this is going to become the foot for the piece, a bit of a pedestal. So So it's going to take a bit of energy, a bit of a time to take that solid, relatively cold piece of glass. We use that term, the terms hot and cold relatively in here. In general, we say hot is around 2,000 degrees. That's what our material starts out at in the furnace, right at 2,100 degrees. We'll say that cold in here is around 1,000 degrees. Most of the time when we're working, we don't want that material to go below 1,000 degrees, especially not too quickly. Otherwise, we can get into some cracking.
So God, he's homesick.
She feels just fine.
My allergy meds feel great.
I don't know about you guys, but a lot of our staff are suffering from allergies from all of this hot and cold weather we've been having.
The other thing that's really I love about these is they don't show you when you watch people blow these up is the bubbles. You fire the panels and you go through long enough like
So now the bowl or vessel is in a bit of a holding pattern, right? We want to keep that vessel hot, but not moving. And we don't want it to let it drop below a certain temperature either, like I said. We know what happens. We won't talk about it. So Clifton's over here working on melting that down. You can see the edges have become pretty soft. Just a series of getting it hot, shaping it, getting it hot, shaping it. When we work normally, our clear glass is already ready. It's already hot. In this case, we're doing things a little bit different. Every piece of glass that we use has to be placed into a kiln, picked up on a piece of steel, reheated, and melted.
Lefty, you want to just use my hole?
Yeah, yeah. Going back and forth, trying to keep your way.
Is that a hole, Sean? Did you pick up a good day? I think I'll get yours picked up.
I probably won't do a whole of these,
Okay.
but that doesn't mean I won't be attached to the bottom.
Yeah, right. I don't see why you can't do a bowl. Do you?
No,
I love bowls.
love bowls. Is this, what shape are we going for here?
I'm gonna open it in the control plate.
Okay.
More of a plate like.
Okay,
I'm gonna try. The problem I'm seeing right now is those canes. The
right,
cane,
right.
This little clear bit right here is not moving before the black moves. Which means when I go to try to open it, those aren't gonna move. I'll have to add additional heat to get them to move at the same rate that I get the black to move,
Mm-hmm.
which could be problematic on the putty. So
Right.
we're gonna try. It's gonna be a lot of cooling, I think, the lid, heating the cane, cooling the lid, heating the cane.
Gotcha,
That's the
gotcha.
situation.
So I don't know if you guys could hear that, but basically Tatar is saying we are in a constant balance here. We're balancing heat. Now she's kind of dealing with the middle part of that piece, the cane, where the cane is not moving at the same rate as that black. The cane is moving a little bit slower. It's taking a little bit more energy to get that moving. So we're kind of battling, getting everything hot, and the black moving first. So the plan for this piece might be kind of a flatter shape. But of course, the challenge of that will be plates are usually spun out using centrifugal force and heat, right? So usually in that case, if you have color in this piece, all of that color needs to be heating and moving at the same rate so that when you spin it out flat, one area of that glass isn't moving more than the other, and it keeps things usually round. Otherwise, if one area gets hotter, like let's say we have more black on one side and more white on the other side, when you go to spin and heat, that black is going to keep moving while the white will stop, and you're not going to have a nice round plate. We'll go back over here to the foot being made. Applying the first layer of black powder to the surface. Again, just in a bit of a holding pattern on this side. That cane is looking really nice in between there. Nice window.
Very good.
basically the plan here is Clifton's going to get that glob of glass really, really hot, right? It's mostly clear, and then lots of black powder melted on the outside. So he's going to get that glob really, really hot. Eventually, he's going to come over to the Marver table, and he's going to cut that glass off. We call it a cookie foot because it looks kind of like a cookie on a baking tray as it's sitting on the Marver table. So we've got that glass really, really hot, enough that it just drips off the end of the pipe. A quick snip with some diamond shears, maybe a little torch to spot heat that area. And now, to the best of Tatara's ability, we're going to stick this to the bottom of the foot. That way. Nice stick, very nice. Nicely done, nice and centered. So a little reheat, that foot is still really, really hot. So we have a little bit of time to shape it as needed. So we're going to use a series of tools to create a little mold essentially on the bottom of this piece to shape it. Little extra bits of fire. We're just using a wooden paddle and again that steel tool called the jacks.
Give a little dip.
Sometimes we put a little indentation on the bottom so that this piece sits more on a ring and less on a flat side. Looking awesome, guys. All right, so now I believe Clifton soon will be preparing a punty, which is going to be a temporary connection to the bottom of that piece where that foot is, so that we can break it free of the pipe and reheat the lip to rework it.
Save this pipe for the next one? Or you want to trash it? I'm down to trash it. I know.
He's got a lot of black on the next one.
Again, normally in this process, if we were going to make a punty, we just go right into the furnace, gather some glass, make it really, really quickly. We don't really have that opportunity again because we're using
Let's keep it, just in case.
Okay.
So Tatar and Cliff are considering, are we going to keep the extra glass that's left on the pipe? Normally we wouldn't worry about it because we have plenty of other material in the furnace. But we might hold on to that bit of glass in case we need it later in the demonstration. So Cliff is preparing the punty, again that temporary connection that's going to be placed on the bottom of the piece. Again, Tatara in that holding pattern, keeping everything nice and warm, not allowing the glass to get too cold or too hot. Small amount of water is added to that constriction line, creating a weak point so that when we send a vibration to the pipe,
Very good, very clean.
so that bit of glass is going to be placed in our pipe warmer just to keep it happy in case we need some extra glass for later. So now that lip is being rewarmed because that was the coldest part, right? Again, a relative term. So we're reheating the lip so that we can manipulate it. Depending on what we want to shape this thing, we might flare that lip out, right, to kind of a bowl shape, or get it hot and spin it and make more of a flat, kind of flatter shape. Tara's using that oxygen propane torch to spot heat that area on the lip. We might do a little trimming so that that lip is a little more even. It's also just a way we can focus that heat.
Okay, Gene. Did we open it up or leave it as it is? Did we open it up or leave it as is? What does it look like? Hey, Cliff, can I get a paddle?
Anybody?
You said the black is moving much more than that band, right? I'm gonna have to add additional heat to the band if I open it into a plate. Which is fine, I can do that. It will.
I kind of like the shape that we have going here.
But it does have an interesting shape, except that it's yeah, I like the shape, man.
I like the shape.
Except the lip didn't, yeah.
Awesome.
Didn't break off as clean as I wanted it to.
Yeah, the break off on the neck here wasn't
So
quite as
probably
even.
affected,
So we're kind of just trying to get that even before proceeding to the next step. But I think we have a good shape going here. I think it's a nice shape.
you like the shape?
Yeah.
If you're gonna open it up, what shape would you plate? Into a plate? Oh.
So I think the debate is whether we should leave this in this kind of round shape or heat the lip and spin it and open it. Again, the challenge with the spinning is that that veil or that window of clear cane is moving at a different rate. It's a little stiffer than the black glass.
Yeah, if you want to spin it out into a bowl shape, a fluty bowl.
I mean, it's an interesting pattern, so spinning it, stretching it might make it diluted. But spin out the lip and let the top go in. It's all roll.
Do that? Yeah.
Okay, my part of this collaboration is done.
God damn it, Gene.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
I did the pattern, that's it.
So everyone's kind of asking Jean for, well, what's the next step? What do we want to do? And she says, well, I've done my work here. She's done all the prep, the initial prep to make the actual platter. So she says she's out on this. I don't know, you guys at home, maybe y'all want to comment. What should we do with the shape? I think we're going to spin it, it looks like. The decision, I think, has been made.
They might have some ideas on the next panel.
Yeah.
Patty voted leave it.
All right, all right.
I could toss that piece.
I think it's going pretty well.
Can I get a little paddle?
I think we're going to leave this shape that we have. now we're going to let this thing cool off a little bit, and Clifton is preparing to catch this piece so that we can place it into the oven so that it can cool overnight. We might have a little final adjustment to be made. We can see a bit more of that black. Now that it's cooling off, it doesn't look as red. We can't let it cool off too quick. So every now and then we're going to go back into the furnace to keep things happy, just to keep it warm, not to necessarily get things moving. We're having some second guessing on the shape. We might
spin it out and give it a little more of a weight.
We might flare it out.
Broader.
Gotcha. So we're gonna flare that lip a little bit wider. Mostly just using heat and centrifugal force. You can see that thing spinning out nicely. Nice control.
I have the force with the paper. That's kind of nice though. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, that's better. Makes my OCD feel a little bit better.
Sometimes artists have a hard time knowing when the piece is done, but I think we've decided now it's done, right? Everything is a balance in the studio. So we're balancing that heat, letting the lip cool off a little bit, adding some heat to the back half, mostly to that punty, because we want a nice clean break. You can see that small glass rod that's connected to the bottom of the piece. Eventually, in a few moments, that's going to be broken off so that we can put this piece into the annealing oven, the cooling oven.
Maybe one more after this. Sorry, bud.
Communication is key in here. Tatara's let Cliff know she's going to do one more last flash after this. That way we're all on the same page. Get a good shot as this cools off. You can see that cane.
Something to think about, right? If you made a plate, you could see it, use it on the table.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I was thinking with the fuse it too.
Right. All right, bud. Here we go.
Chris.
All right, so this is the last flash.
Honey sauce?
Probably not.
You guys are no fun, man. Oh, man. It's hard to do stuff. No fun. Still really hot.
So a little bit of cold water is added to that connection point. Oh man, fudge. It got hot.
Huh?
It got hot.
Stick it in front of a fan.
All right, so we've knocked that off. We have a little moment to add some heat to that break-off area so we can fire polish it so there's no sharp edge. That piece will go away into our annealing oven, sitting it right at 920 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, awesome job, team. Very nice. Excellent.
Yeah, it's working in front of the fence. So it'll cool off.
Sorry guys, my camera got a little warm, as you can imagine.
When you're done with it, just pop it back there and plug it in. I'll go pull that other one.
All right, guys, sorry about that. We're back. So that piece was successfully put away. I don't know if you saw it, but my camera got a little warm in that area. In that area in front of the glory hole where both of the doors were open. So now we have another camera here.
4 degrees out of 8. It's perfect.
Nice and toasty in here. Nice winter day here in Texas. I didn't think we'd have to worry about the equipment getting hot, but I don't know why I thought that.
Yeah, if you get too close, they're just a little sassy.
Yeah.
That one will heat up faster too.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So right now Clifton has that previous collar that was used for the last piece. We've kind of saved it. And now we're going to reheat it and shape it back and reuse that glass for another collar, which is basically just a little disc on the end of a hollow blowpipe so that we can still blow through this thing. Just heating and shaping. You can see that there is some of that black glass left. Not really an issue because this part of the piece doesn't end up in the end piece, in the end result. It's kind of just a tool that we use. It doesn't end up in the piece, but completely necessary for the process. And again, we have to use all the same formula of glass. If you're just now joining us, tonight we're working on rolling up some kiln-formed plates made with Bullseye Glass. Gene Fernandez has worked on some different patterns. We've already rolled up 2 pieces for the evening. If you guys were with us on the last piece, my camera got a little warm right at the end, but the piece was successful and made it into the annealing oven safely. So now we have one more kiln plate in the oven that will be rolled up on this collar that Clifton is working on right now. just taking the time to make sure that this collar, as it's called, is the right. We really want it to be nice and round and the exact diameter that we need. So we're going to use a tool called a pie divider that's going to be used to give us the exact diameter of this collar that we need in order to roll up the flat kiln efficiently, where it's not too large and the sheet doesn't come together nicely, or it can be too small, and when you roll up that flat piece, your ends overlap. We want it to be just the right size so that those two seams come together really nicely. And this glass is a little bit stiffer, I believe, than the glass we normally use in the studio. Again, if you guys are just joining us, the piece that we're about to make, all of the glass that we're going to use for the entire process was placed into an oven, heated, and then picked up on either a solid steel pipe or a hollow one. Heated and then melted to shape. Normally, we just use our furnace glass, dip up in here, and we have all the material that we need clear, nice and hot, and ready. So this is something a little different, a little more special. Checking the diameter, making sure we're right. Alright, so now we're preparing for the roll-up. Clifton has got the collar to the nice diameter that he needs, just keeping it warm. In a few moments, Kevin is going to use this tool called the Pastorelli to bring that kiln shelf with the glass sheet on it outside of the kiln and into the reheating furnace to warm it up before it is rolled up. So we've warmed up the steel a little bit. We're going to go into that oven. He's going to very carefully grab that plate. So this plate is similar to the last one. Two areas of that black. The area in the middle is a little different. It's not made of cane, it's made of sheet glass as well. Sheet glass that has been cut into thin strips and then laid on its side so that you get this kind of staggered, kind of brick pattern in the middle. So right now Kevin is reheating that glass, warming it up slowly until we're up to temp, warm enough so that this can be rolled up. Of course, this is all a balance. So every now and again, this whole piece needs to be rotated because inherently the end going into the furnace first and coming out last is always the warmest. You can see that part's glowing a little bit more. So every so often, we're going to take the shelf and we're going to rotate it around so that the plate is heated a little more evenly. Get a little closer, we can see that pattern. Awesome.
Yeah.
Keeping everything warm. Again, we don't want things to cool off too quickly in here. we're gonna go through a series of reheating to that plate to get it soft enough so that it can bend, so that it can roll up and bend, but not so hot that it fuses to the kiln shelf. Again, it's all a balance here. Looking awesome.
Go for it. We're in a good spot because this side close to us is still hotter. Okay. So I think this one will be fine. I had a sneaky suspicion if it was hotter or it was so cold that it would roll up. Alright. Go with your gut. Yeah. You got it. Nice and messy ones. Definitely one more time. That was an issue with the other one not rolling up. Is the black looks hotter than it actually is.
Oh, that's gonna be so stiff in the center. I'm so sorry. I just realized there's so much white in that center glass.
And if you've been to Cynical Studios before, or any glass studio, really, you've noticed there's a bit of a dance involved, right? And a lot of communication is needed so that, you know, everyone is in the right place at the right time with the right heat. Again, rotating the shelf is needed so that it's heated a little more even, so that one side is not too much hotter than the other. Clifton is just making sure he has that heat just the way he wants it when he rolls that piece up. So I think this is the final heat before the roll up.
Don't make those scary noises. Only I get to make the scary noises. Nice.
Great heat, great heat. I don't know. Got it? Now we'll just do a little dusting to remove some of that wash from the kiln. Kind of prevents it from sticking to the shelf. You're gonna make sure to get all that off. Excellent. Great roll up. Now the Pastorelli is moved out of the way. So now Clifton is going to go through a series of reheats to bring this seam together very carefully. Not all at once. Usually the area closest to the steel first. And there is a little kiln dust on there still. Yeah, a couple of white. So we might give it another dust before it gets too hot.
Yeah, give it a good blast.
I think that's better. Just giving another dust to make sure that there's not as much of that either kiln wash or kiln material stuck to the glass. Again, going through a series of reheats to bring that seam together, first at the area near the pipe, and then eventually closing the end together. So essentially, this is going to be rolled up, made into a cylinder, and in the end, the area away from the pipe is going to be closed off, creating a bubble so that we can actually inflate this thing. We are on a blow hose, but if we blow through this thing, obviously it's going to go right through the end. So we're bringing that seam together. The team is noticing a little bit of kiln debris on the piece, so wondering if it's going to be enough to be visibly noticeable. So we might use a Dremel tool, some type of rotary diamond tool, usually used on the glass when it's cold or at room temperature, but sometimes it can be used when the glass is warm to grind away some unwanted debris that has really stuck to the glass that we can't just wipe away. And if we proceed with the process, whatever's in there is absolutely going to stay. So Clifton has came to the Marver, M-A-R-V-E-R. This steel table is used to cool and shape the glass really rapidly, working it into this nice cylinder shape. So we'll probably do this a few times, heating and shaping as needed. We've got that glass nice and warm, coming back using that Marver. Our seam came together really nicely.
It looks like it came together pretty okay.
So the idea with this seam is to make it as least noticeable as possible. So now we have a little rotary tool, a Dremel tool, with a diamond bit on the end that we can use to grind away some of that kiln material. Now, yes, it is adding scratches to the glass, right? But all it's going to take is one good heat to melt away the little scratches. The priority really is to get rid of any of the debris that's not glass. It's more like stone. Sometimes when you have something mixed in with the glass, it doesn't like to play nicely. And it can either, at the very least, be a visual aspect that's unwanted, or sometimes a structural problem where that material might not be compatible with the glass and it might cause it to crack. Another reason why we're not adding any of the glass from our furnace, right? We don't want to add any of that spruce pine glass to our Bullseye glass. Definitely incompatible. So all the glass that we're using, even the what's on the collar and what's on the punties, is all made with the same formula. Again, Cliffs is using that Dremel tool to grind away any small amounts of kiln debris that might be left in the glass.
reader's out.
They're very expensive. Don't melt, plastic Dremel. That's good, yeah.
Of course, this tool is not made to be used for hot glass, but
Melt the shit out of that.
so now Cliff is using a tool. It's just a bunch of folded wet newspaper, maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 pieces of newspaper. Sorry, my temperature has got a little warm. Let me swap out cameras. Where's the other camera?
They're all over.
This has got hot again.
Oh. So your mic's still live. You can keep talking because
Again, using that Dremel to grind away some of that. Make sure there's no little pieces of kiln in that piece.
this just will die very fast. Okay? I'll pull this out.
Back in so we can get a little bit closer. Sorry about that, guys.
Can't really tell if there's any on the pattern.
Right.
Looking good. Much more clean. So now we've cleaned up the surface. Now we can think about reheating the material and shaping as needed. What shape are we making?
Is everything hot?
I think some type of...
Really? You think devil work? What's the one color you can't see on a whiteboard? Yellow.
I'll get a little zoom in. So I think
The hokey face?
this is kind of the shape that we're going to be shooting for here. Kind of this low, squatty base shape.
Really burn hot.
So now we're using that newspaper to cool and shape, starting to bring that in, that lip area away from the pipe, closer together, eventually all the way together, so that we have a closed end. This tool likes to stay a little wet, a little soggy, so we add a little water to that.
Are we doing a cookie on this, or is it going to be the bottom of the recipe? Okay.
Okay. All right, back to the Marver, shaping it up, keeping it nice and centered to the blowpipe. So now it looks like we're just kind of focusing heat on the end, getting that area warm, and eventually bringing it together so that we have a sealed vessel, more of a bubble shape.
You guys pick the skinniest jacks on purpose?
Cliff is using a tool called the jacks to start that constriction line, bringing that glass together to a nice termination. See, there's still an opening. We're going to bring it down eventually to where it's totally sealed right about now. So now we have a sealed vessel. So now we can reheat and actually blow into the pipe. So that little bit of extra glass will probably be trimmed off. Then likely reheating the whole vessel, blowing and shaping to that drawing we have on the whiteboard. the glass is hot enough, you can actually cut it with a tool that looks like a pair of scissors. These are called the shears, straight shears. The blade's nice and straight. Gives you a nice straight cut.
So this color is on the surface, flat. It's right on the surface of this one.
When you lay it out on the shelf, you put the color down.
Yeah.
So now that the actual bubble is closed off, we can come and Marver and shape, cooling that tip, thickening the glass at the end, because this is going to be, the tip there, the point, is going to be the bottom of the vessel. So we want that area to be a little bit thicker. So we have a nice, stable, thick bottom. Eventually, we're going to make a temporary connection to that bottom called a punty, eventually breaking that glass off the bottom. So you want that area, the bottom of the piece, to be a little bit thicker.
We move it together. I don't think that the end seems much more stiff so far.
Cliff says everything is moving as it needs to be. The two colors aren't moving at too much of a different rate, which is something we'd have to worry about, right? Where the black might be heating up and moving a little bit quicker than that area in the middle with that white and clear glass. Really focusing on cooling that tip, making this kind of conical setup shape before we start to blow into it. Yeah, normally in this studio, if we wanted more material with this piece, we'd just go back into the furnace and add a second layer of clear glass. But this is all of the material that we get to use, right? Because this is a different formula of glass that's in our furnace. So basically what we have here is basically all we get to use. Unless we want to add different components to that, we can heat them up in the oven, pick them up on the end of a blowpipe, then reheat them as needed. But now a small amount of air is being added just to get that bubble moving, just to get it blown a little bit before we really start to inflate this thing. So we've got a pretty nice setup shape. Clifton is now using a torch called the fluffy torch, right? We used this earlier. We're going to use this to spot heat one area. Let the rest of the glass cool off a little bit. So we might want to add that heat in that area so that we can blow it thinner. Another reason is so that eventually we need to make a constriction line off the head of the steel so that we can break it free of the pipe. So as that area near the steel is heating up, the area off the end, the pointy end, is cooling off, which is what we want. Kind of building heat in the area near the pipe, letting everything kind of cool off a little bit everywhere else. Right. So now we're going to get Kevin hooked up to a blow hose, and Cliff will let Kevin know when we need air. Cliff has let Kevin know to provide some light air pressure just to start inflation, probably a little bit of back pressure just to keep this thing stable. You'll notice we can't hang out outside of the heat too long before we go back into the furnace and reheat. Clifton has gone back to the fluffy torch so that we can keep adding heat in the area nearest to the pipe. Kevin blows, that area will move first. That area is going to expand a little bit quicker. So Kevin just added a little wax to that tool so that it glides along the material a little bit easier. Now that constriction line is started. I'm risking it over by this heat. I don't want the equipment to get too hot, but I want you guys to see what's going on here. So Cliff is starting that constriction, all the while Kevin is shielding Cliff from the heat, the radiant heat coming off of this piece. Again, back to a torch. The idea is to constrict that area down a little bit further so that we know it will break cleanly later. And then we can start to really address the shape of the piece. The neckline is very important because we eventually have to free this thing from the pipe, right? We have to get it off. So we want to make sure that that line is clearly defined before proceeding. Another reheat. That material's moving nicely, nice heat. Again, back to that constriction line, allowing gravity to elongate the form slightly. Yeah.
Cork it? Yeah. Absolutely cork it. We'll puff it up and cork it flat. Cool. Finish that neck one more time.
Again, back to that neckline, really defining it. Again, very important. That way we know this piece will break nicely from the pipe. We're essentially creating a weak point that can be broken later. And most of the time when we're working in this studio on a piece, we're working from the pipe out, right? From the steel out, addressing that area, working our way out to the tip, then eventually bringing what's called a punty, connecting to the bottom temporarily so that we can break free of the pipe and then reheat the lip to work that. So now we'll start reheating the remainder of the vessel, blowing, shaping as needed. Again, using the folded wet newspaper to cool and shape. Kevin is providing some light air pressure. We can see this thing inflate slowly. We don't want it to inflate too quickly. It could thin out in areas we don't want. So good steady heat, get a little bit of work done, and we'll go right back to the heat, get things hot, and do that a few more times. In this specific piece, we're being very careful not to blow that material out too thin. Again, this is all the material we have to work with. So we're limited on the scale here, right? We don't want to blow this thing too large, otherwise the material is going to be really thin. And then of course that creates all kinds of problems when reheating the glass when it's too thin. You can't support its own weight. It likes to crumple.
Before?
Again, going through a series of reheats, keeping that glass nice and toasty, specifically that area near the pipe wants to get coolest first. But you can see our shape coming to fruition before us. Now, of course, the design might change depending on how the glass wants to move, right? A lot of times that happens. We have a design or an idea in our head, and then we start working, and the glass kind of has a mind of its own. The design might change depending on that. So we might be going for a little bit taller of a shape on this one, right? Which it might be a nice contrast to the other two lower pieces that we have in the kiln already.
Oh, now it looks like it's stretching a little bit different.
Blowing nice and firm, expanding it out. You'll notice that we don't get a ton of work done with this glass. It doesn't have a long working time. So we heat a little bit, get a little bit done, heat a little bit, get a little bit done. So Clifton now has a couple of cork paddles. These can be used to squish the glass, right? So we're capping one into the blowpipe to keep some back pressure. Very quickly squishing this round shape, more of a flat kind of 2D teardrop shape. Very nice. So now we're not working in the round anymore, right? We have more of a flattened shape. We might do one more little adjustment, maybe with the paper, to kind of shape this up, get the walls a little bit prettier. Man, that looks great. Blowing a little bit. Man, that pattern looks really nice in contrast with the black. So the area that Cliff is torching now, that's going to be the bottom of the piece. Right now it's a bit of a point. Well, we're going to warm that up and squish it flat so that it sits on a surface. I want everything else to kind of cool off a little bit. Very nice. So you can see that area is glowing hot. That's the area that's warmest. A little shaping first. A little wooden paddle, light pressure at first, pushing that area flat. So we got a little bit done, that's okay. We're going to reheat it and push it a little bit further so it's a little bit more flat. So it has a nice stable bottom to sit on. You can see Clifton always flashing the glass, as we call it, a little bit of a flash heat to keep that area near the pipe nice and warm. If that area gets too cold, you can guess what will happen. It'll crack. Again, adding that wooden paddle to the bottom, squishing it a little more flat, giving it more of a base, more of a bottom.
Yeah. Let's just go ahead and go right to it, yeah. Running the flash.
Might be a little sticky. There we go.
That's nice and quiet. Is that a good thing? Yeah. Everybody's intense, everybody's focused.
Nice and quiet in this studio. Everyone's really focused.
If you have any fears or concerns or questions, let us know. Yeah.
Again, going back to that bottom, we really want to make sure it's got a nice flat base to sit on before we proceed. One more heat, we say. Again, using a...
An eighth of an inch or less of thickness in reality. Well, maybe more.
I bet there's more.
Probably like a quarter inch since you squeezed it down and connected it.
I think you got some good thickness, yeah.
I'm just thinking in terms of what it would have been normally.
So the team is considering how thick is the bottom? How thick is that area of glass on the bottom of the piece? This is very important because in a few moments...
We're going to take a solid rod with a little bit of glass, shape it, cool it, stick it to the bottom so we can break it off with blowpipe and then work the top.
Exactly what Kevin said. Basically, a small amount of glass on the end of a solid rod.
Nice and light and delicate, so any unneeded vibration forces it to break. Good.
Good looking bottom. So now we're ready for the punty, the transfer. Whoops. Maybe flattening that one more time.
We're working with a very different glass than what we normally use in this studio. This is
Kevin is working on building the punty. Again, that temporary connection.
This glass. Normally what
The
we're
bottom.
working here is a measurable expansion rate of 96. This has an expansion rate of 90. And it doesn't seem like a whole lot, but our working time is cut in about half as to what we would normally be able to do. So normally putting that bottom in, we could do it in 2 heats and spend between 20 to 30 seconds actually influencing it. With this glass, you've got about 10 seconds to physically do something to it before it's too cold to actually manipulate. Shake.
They have to be the same top glass.
Yeah, or as they cool, they'll crack.
Okay. Then they cool the same rate.
Yeah, they have to shrink at the same rate as they cool. Yeah.
How do you know that you have like the same temperature when you put them together?
Experience, failure, struggle, success, memory.
Color, movement,
Okay.
a whole lot of little things crammed together in one brief moment.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Every single time.
Kevin is shaping that punty,
50% of the time, it's right every time.
cooling it off so that it's a nice temperature to make a temporary connection to the bottom of that
Smart,
piece.
you brought that way hotter.
Yeah,
than you
that
would,
was a
put the
good,
hot
yep.
glow on it a lot.
It's not my first rodeo, but it's been a long time since I've been at the
Rodeo
rodeo.
is in town.
I know. Anytime.
Small amount of water
So
to that
water on
constriction
that
line.
line to add a thermal stress. So we'll set it up on the rail, add a little vibration. Vibration finds a weak spot, and it hops off. That is thin, buddy. Holy cow.
It's just light.
Yeah.
It's light glass.
So Kevin mentioned that, wow, that's much lighter than we expected. Well, remember, we didn't start out with a ton of material, so that is blown fairly thin.
We should have probably made that hat a little bigger for you.
Yeah, nice and thin.
Because we add a nice defined.
So you guys may know that generally the thinner the glass you're blowing, working with, the more of a challenge it is, right? That thinner glass doesn't hold its heat as long, so you have to reheat more often. Also, when you're trying to get that thin glass to move, you get it hot, you sit at the bench, and then it's immediately cold again, right? Because it's not holding that heat. It's great.
That vibration could break both spots at the exact same time.
So now the area that was connected to the blowpipe is being reheated now. That will be the lip of the piece, the top of the piece of the vessel. So we're reheating that area so that we can shape it, maybe trim it, stretch it. So we're using the jacks to open that lip a little wider, getting a little work done, reheating, and so on.
That's a Clifton shape.
Who'd have thought a Clifton shape? Letting gravity elongate the lip, right? Pointing it down, and then back to the jacks to shape as needed. And I'll try not to let the camera get too hot this time, we'll see. So now we're letting gravity do some of the work, be some of the design, right? Getting it hot, spinning it.
Correct.
Coming back with a paper to do some fine tuning shapes.
I'm shaping it right now. I'm all about shaping.
All right, so Cliff has given the signal that this thing is ready to be put away. So Kevin is going to suit up and prepare to patch this piece and place it into our oven over here that's sitting at right at 920 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a nice stable temperature for the glass that we're using. Right now Cliff is reheating the surface, keeping things warm but not too hot. He's allowing it to cool, but not too quickly. Really nice pattern.
So we're going to have an exhibition coming up, actually all in March at Everly Plaza, so down 8th Avenue. We're going to take over that entire ground floor art gallery that they've got, do an ongoing exhibition, getting glass from artists from all over the country.
Maybe a matte gas
So
to
that's one of our biggest
heat that area
fundraisers.
that we're about to break the glass. So that's the punty here. That's the temporary connection that we need to break eventually, right? When we're ready.
So what do y'all got to do here?
Break it. Break the brand pipe. If we let it sit here on the table, it's going to cool off the break. It'll be worthless. So we're going to put it in that cooling oven to cool down nice and slow.
920 degrees, we'll run about 16 hours to get down.
So Cliff is what we call flashing the piece down, letting it cool off, but not too quickly. So letting it cool, adding a little heat, letting it cool more, adding a little heat. Excuse me, until we're down at an appropriate temperature.
They will be finished pieces.
So now we're going to add a small amount of water to that constriction line.
Bottom third is black as well. Top one, let's go. Either side, doesn't matter.
Beautiful. Now we'll use a oxygen propane torch to spot heat that area to melt it soft so that there's not as much of a sharp edge on the bottom. Maybe a little touch.
Whoa, that's bizarre.
Whoa.
You see that blade?
Yeah.
What happened?
It just disappeared. All right. And now away it goes into the annealing oven to hang out overnight so that it can cool. Awesome job, everybody. Great job, Team SiNaCa. Thank you for joining us for our live stream, Open Studios, January 2022. Thank you guys for joining us on the live stream.
So we have about an hour. We have about an hour left. We're going to talk with the team, take a break from the camera for a little bit, and then we'll come back. So just kind of hang out on our live stream. We're going to chat with the
Awesome
team.
job.
Clifton's looking like he's done, but we're not done.
Yep.
So just hang out, you guys. Blake's going to get a little bit of a breather, some water, and then we'll be back in about 5 to 10 minutes.
Awesome.
nonprofit dedicated to education, dedicated to community, and we use glass art and the creative process to help people to heal and to become interested in the visual arts, to become interested in science. A lot of our programming is focused around STEM concepts, STEAM concepts really, to include the arts. And we are a public access studio here for everyone. Cynical Studios was founded in 2010. We started offering program in early 2011, and we have over 30,000 people come and participate. The brand really illustrates community and bringing together the primary elements in community. We offer glass blowing opportunities, we offer flame working classes and workshops, and we also offer kiln forming classes. We've done programming for domestic abuse survivors, we've done programming for homeless kids and people who are looking to heal. We've used our process to help people to express themselves. One of our probably more powerful stories is about a young woman named Alexis who came in, and she had never worked with glass, and we did a kiln forming project, and she and her brother and several other students cast their ideas into thick pieces of glass, and she made a heart that helped her to express the loss of her father. Had a pacemaker. It was a real interesting piece, and it ended up going at auction to someone who had also lost their father, and it was a really powerful moment for all of us. She was struggling to express herself, and we helped her to find her voice and to make something that she could not only see how it could help her tell her story, but also to connect in the community and help someone else kind of heal through glass art. As Cynical Studio presents to foundations and to donors and receives support, oftentimes the support is specific to a project where we're bringing in kids that are connected with those foundations or with those donors, and that money goes specifically to offering this opportunity to people who wouldn't have it otherwise. The organization has a sustainability model where we generate revenue in many ways, and that revenue is what covers our overhead and keeps the organization going. The support oftentimes is specific to a program, so that 100% of people's donations go towards offering programming to people. Our outreach and our culture of outreach really drives us to find funding outside of that so we can bring the community in and offer programs specifically to our community. Thank you. We are a determined group, and I pledge that any support offered will be used in endeavors in the spirit of community, with kindness and generosity, and with fearlessness.
All right, you guys, welcome back. So we're going to be demonstrating for about 1 more hour tonight. As we usually do, we demonstrate on the second Friday of the month from 6 to 9 p.m. So we've got another hour of programming for you if you want to hang out with us and watch. The team's going to be working on a few different items related to our fundraising events. So this is the first demonstration of the year. So this is such a great opportunity to talk to you guys about some of the other stuff we do. A lot of you know about our classes. That's, I would say, probably a big chunk of what we do. So hopefully by now you all know that you can come and take a class here in the Glassblowing Studio, which is this studio right here. The Flameworking Studio, which is working in front of torches with borosilicate or soft glass. And then the Kiln Forming Studio, which is working without direct heat. So working with the glass in its cold form, cutting, assembling it, and then melting it in an oven.
And at this point, it would have fallen on the floor already, right?
So the glass we're messing with today, wait, this is Bullseye.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the
Making a-
bullseye left over.
making a bowl out of Bullseye?
No, we're thinking of taking that, getting it hot, and shaping it down. So honestly,
I'm gonna tap this one off and think of another one.
that would actually be really cool. Just leave it as is.
Yeah.
Because we could grind one top section of it, and if we need it for a bottom, just leave it kind of rough.
Yeah.
It would be cool looking with those vertical lines.
Yeah, with all those chunks broken off.
Yeah. I think that would actually look
Yeah,
really
I
nice.
got the funkiest piece of billet out of the back.
Yeah.
The one that kind of broke all crazy coming out of the mold. It had some steel on it. and
Got
some
it, got it.
stuff.
You got all that stuff off, I hope.
I'll find a way.
So you guys, this glass right here that we've been working with tonight is Bullseye, which is not a glass that we usually work with in this studio. The glass that we work with is behind this door in our furnace. If you come take a class with us, we're going to be working out of this furnace right here. So the glass is kept at about 2100 degrees, pretty much year round. And it is a lot softer than the glass that you saw our team work with today, which is Bullseye Glass. Now, Bullseye Glass is made out in Portland, Oregon. They're a pretty big manufacturer, and they supply glass to pretty much everywhere in the world. They are the only company that I know of that is making, wait. I take that back. There are several sheet glass companies, but they are one of the only companies that tests every single sheet of glass that comes out of their furnaces. So they sell their glass as 90-ish, which is basically a tested compatible glass, and it is a glass that they test with itself. So we know that by cutting the glass, melting it with itself, it's going to work pretty great. So those were all the demos that we were working with today. That's a glass that Clifton is messing with still, just to kind of shape it up for any future experiments. So what we did to prep that glass that Clifton's working with is we took a bunch of sheet glass. Those of you who are fusers or kiln formers, this is a great thing to do with your excess broken clear glass. So what we did was we took a bunch of clear glass and we melted it down into brick.
Oh, there's all those bubbles in there.
Yeah, so it's just a nice way to get rid of the excess glass that you might have. I know that if you are working with fused glass, you probably have a ton of clear glass laying around. And so that glass is going to be really awesome for this process if you ever do it.
Just to get it out of the box.
I get it now. I was like,
So Clifton's just like kind of prepping those blanks, heating them up a little bit to take off the sharp edges. But Kevin over there is starting to work on the next item, which I believe is a bowl. So Cynical Studios does a bunch of fundraising events through the year. One of them is related to these cool bowls that we make. So a lot of you guys know about our Ice Cream Social, which is a fundraising event for the equipment upgrades that we do over the summer. So Kevin's starting us off with a gather of clear glass. He's heating it up. You saw him marver it into a really nice shape. Blew a bubble into it. And then his next job is going to be going into these beautiful optic molds. So by putting the glass in that optic mold, it takes on these beautiful ridges. And then he's rolling it in a little bit of color to get the color to stick inside of those ridges. Is that a white frit, Kevin? Periwinkle?
Light violet.
Oh, light violet. All right.
Opal light.
So,
Number 152 in the program, one card.
so opal light violet is the color we're using today for this bowl. So, anytime you want to add texture, this is a really nice way to do it. These optic molds are a great way to add texture onto glasses.
Dang, that's a beast.
For those of you who came and made ornaments with us this past year, some of you probably saw the glass going into those molds. If you've made a pumpkin, we've used those as well for pumpkins. And then by giving the glass a little twist on the marver, Kevin's able to twist up those lines. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera. It's pretty cool. Oh yeah, Kevin's slowing it down for us. Awesome. Perfect. So we've got a nice little twisty on that glass. I'm pretty sure he's gonna gather over that. So he's gonna double stamp it. So he's gonna give it some heat. Gonna go back into that mold, and it's gonna change the pattern just a little bit. So this tends to give it kind of almost like a crisscrossy pattern. So that's a second stamp on there. The glass has got to constantly be reheated so that it doesn't crack on us, so we can continue to shape it. And so you'll see Kevin do that pretty often. He's rolling in color and then almost immediately goes back into the reheating chamber to heat it up. So like I was saying earlier, SiNaCa does a bunch of fundraising events. A couple of them are Ice Cream Social, which happens in July, and Poshi, which is our Pride of Southside Homebrew Invitational, that happens in October. So we're going to be demonstrating a couple of items that we usually have for sale during those events. A lot of these fundraising events help us to keep this place alive. So I know a lot of you that are watching out there have participated with us in the past. That's such a great way to come out and support us. Hang out with us, eat some ice cream during the Ice Cream Social. One of the best parts about that event is we get to smash our donation jar for the year. I mean, I guess that's arguable. It's not always the best part for all of us. Some of us, it's heartbreak. But a lot of people love watching us smash that donation jar for the year. And we get to also unveil the next donation jar. So that's something to watch out for. The Homebrew Invitational Poshi in October is also a very fun event because you get to come hang out with us, drink some beer, taste a bunch of different beers as well. So that's something to put on your radar too. nice opportunity to buy some really cool glass for yourself as well, if that's something you want to do. So the glass that Kevin's working with and the glass that Clifton's working with over here are both totally different. We can't really mix those together because they have different formulas. So Clifton's working with Bullseye, a little chunk of Bullseye glass, which is the glass I mentioned is made out in Portland, Oregon. Their factory is actually pretty cool. If you're ever out in that area, be sure to check it out. It's pretty awesome. And they hand make every sheet of glass. So they provide a ton of jobs in the area as well. The glass that Kevin's using, we get from spruce pine, I believe in North Carolina. And it comes to us in raw material form. So we get it as what we call batch, which is a bunch of raw materials that include silica, sodium, and calcium. And then we pop it into this furnace. We pop it into this furnace and we get to melt it down into usable material. Both glasses are super different. So if you're ever here working with our spruce pine glass, you'll notice that it is pretty nice and soft, gooey. You can work with it for very long periods of time. And if you ever, for any reason, decide you want to try Bullseye, you're gonna find that it works very, very different in the studio. It's pretty stiff. Doesn't like a lot of movement, needs to be a lot hotter than spruce pine to get it to move. So for those of you at home who have never worked with glass, you might think that all glass is similar, but it really isn't. Each type of glass has a different melting, it melts differently. It needs different heat, it stretches differently. And it expands and contracts differently. Glass is super fascinating. And the coolest part is it's all around us. So a lot of you probably wear glasses. You all definitely have glass windows in your homes, your cars, and almost every piece of glass is a little bit different. But silica, sodium, calcium is the main components, the basic formula of what goes into making a glass. And from there, everything changes. So we can put in different additives to change the glass. We can put in different colorants to change the color. But absolutely a fun material to work with, regardless of what kind of glass you're using. So Heidi popped a link to our Ice Cream Social page on our website, if you guys want to check it out. That is a really cool event. We've tentatively set that date for the 9th of July. Remember, that's the event where you can come hang out with us, eat some ice cream, actually buy a bowl to eat your ice cream in, which is kind of cool. And then we also do sand castings during that event. So if you want to, if you have a kiddo or a doggy and you want to get their hand or paw permanently in glass, like a print of their hand or their paw at that moment in time, that is such a cool event to come to. It's like almost like taking a photograph, right, of your kid's hand, stick it in some sand, and then we pour glass on the sand. And that's pretty much a permanent little sculpture of your little person's hand. So if you're wondering about those, here are some really cool examples of sand castings. So what we do is we press little impressions. There's the little kiddo's hand. We put little impressions into the sand, and then we pour hot glass into it. And not only is that a cool object you get to keep forever and ever, but that object also helps to support our programming. So we do raise a bunch of funds through these things that we do, and that keeps this place alive. It helps us to provide classes for people who can't afford them. It helps us to run programming, free programming for veterans. Helps us to bring out artists for these open studio nights. So it's a very cool opportunity there.
Well, but that's done.
All right.
Now we'll get it hot and drop it in the object.
Okay.
Make it magic ensue.
So Kevin's at the point where he's going to, gonna blow, or Clifton's gonna blow this a little bit bigger. So if you guys are coming to take a class, you're gonna get to do this also. Clifton, as you can see there, has a blow hose in his hands, and that blow hose gets attached to the end of the blowpipe. And so that's one way to, so Kevin's gonna be blowing. You can see he's attached that blow hose to the end of that blowpipe. And so he doesn't need to put his mouth on that blowpipe, which is kind of cool because he can see what he's doing as he's blowing. So we're using the back of the jacks to shape, and then we're using the blades to constrict, to make a constriction. This little constriction is where the glass is gonna eventually break off. I don't know, you guys, does that look like a bowl to you? Not quite yet, huh? Right now it looks like a big ball. Almost all vessels are made this way though. So they start off kind of like a closed bubble. And then we're gonna transfer and open the glass. So that's definitely not a bowl right now, but it will be. So Clifton is gathering out glass from our furnace. This furnace sits at about 2100 degrees pretty much all the time. And the glass, when it comes out of there, you can see it's kind of like honey. It's pretty hot. I mean, I say it's pretty hot, but it's really hot. Very gooey as well, kind of like honey. And so I believe Clifton is making a cookie foot, which is basically, it's shaped like a cookie. That's where it gets its name. It's basically a big old blob of glass that's going to get dropped right here on this Marver. Just like that. And then with heat and gravity,
Ooh, it looks like a curler. I want donuts for breakfast now.
it's going to flatten out. Ooh, that's pretty.
Wow.
Wow.
This will be heavily off center.
Away from you. Yeah.
So that cookie is actually going to be the base of the bowl. For those of you who don't watch glass making that often, this is probably gonna be a little confusing. But that base is gonna be where the bowl ultimately sits.
Big old fat one.
So Kevin's putting a few little decorative touches on it. And then we've got to do a transfer. So right now, Kevin's working on the bottom of the bowl. But in order to make this actually a useful item, we've got to flip it around. So while Kevin's working, Clifton's got a punty getting prepped. He's using the Marver to kind of shape it up. And then we're gonna stick that punty to the bottom of this bubble. So most vessels tend to be made this way, where you do a little bit of a transfer move in between. Just kind of make sure the temperature is good for sticking together. With a little bit of water in that constriction, the glass releases and transfers to the other rod. Now the glass is on the punty, and when Clifton or Kevin come back to the bench, we're gonna see that it's open on the side that was attached to the blowpipe. And that's gonna be the inside of the bowl. I know it's a little cold out there right now, but you guys know that Texas summer gets really, really hot, right? So in the summer, you're gonna be like, I wanna go hang out with SiNaCa, eat some ice cream, buy some bowls. Yeah. Actually, this one's probably gonna be for sale. If it makes it in the box, this bowl that you're watching made right now is gonna be for sale in that fundraiser. So hopefully you sign up early and you get the bowl, the one bowl that we made during an open studio night. Because I don't think this has happened before. But if you miss it, then we're gonna have a ton of other cool bowls for you to pick from. That's pretty, I like that foot.
Anytime.
So Clifton is bringing a lip wrap. Just a gooey bit of color that will sit on the lip of that vessel as we open it up. What color was that, Clifton? Some
Bubblegum pink.
bubblegum pink.
It's going to be obnoxiously loud.
Bright pink.
Bright pink. So Kevin's gonna use the jacks to open up the vessel slowly. And at this point now you guys can see this is looking more like a bowl than it did before. One of the things about glass making is you'll notice that our glass blowers are not very well covered. Usually, you don't need a ton of protection to work in the glass studio. In fact, cotton clothes and natural fibers are best. But you can see that Kevin has a Kevlar sleeve on his right arm. And that's gonna protect him from very, very immediate direct heat. So that glass looks orange right now, but it is not going to be orange. Those colors,
So many options.
yeah, those colors are like kind of like purple, and then there's a pink on the lip.
Oh, we'll spin it.
So as the glass cools down, you're gonna see those colors change. But right now it definitely doesn't look like what it's going to look like. So Kevin's planning on spinning it out. He's gonna give it a nice, good heat. Whee! Beautiful. Oh, that's nice. Ooh, I wonder who is gonna get this one in the ice cream social. That is a nice bowl.
Excellent flute.
Beautiful.
Matches the bottom.
Yeah, that looks good. All right. So once we're done with the piece, we gotta make sure it doesn't get too cold and it's not too hot. You can see that Clifton is suited up in some protective gear. He's got to put his hands right on this glass, which is still probably about 1100 or 1000 degrees. They're going to torch the bottom of the piece to get rid of any sharp spots. And then that bowl goes into an annealer, which is going to slowly cool it down overnight. Glass will crack if you leave it out and let it cool down too fast. And so we put it in a box that sits at about 900, and it slowly cools down to room temperature. Nice job, guys.
Patty Plumber will be buying that one.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because she always buys my bowls.
Awesome. Awesome, Patty.
Patty Plumber's not on mine, but, you know,
Oh, got it, got it.
give a little shout out. She won't know it's mine until she buys it.
Got it. So don't forget, you guys, you can come buy bowls at that event. You can also come and make these sand castings, which are so cool. I mean, really, like, think about your kid at this age. You can get their little feet in glass, which is kind of cool. That's something you can look at as an adult and see your little baby feet. That's a super unique opportunity. You can put your hands in, you can bring in a very special item, something that is important to you. The original item doesn't get destroyed. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna press it into sand, we're gonna remove the object, and then put some hot glass in. And you'll have like kind of a replica of your object. So remember, you can look out for that. That happens in July. We're planning to have it on the 9th of July. And I know Heidi put a link to that event in the chat feed, but it is our ice cream social. So make sure you guys check that out online, okay? So the team is planning on making tumblers for our Pashi event. We're just gonna let them take a little bit of a break. It is a little warm today, but I believe Clifton is making a mug for Pashi. Are we gonna use the stamp?
Yeah, Sam and Crow stamps. You make awesome stuff.
So these are stamps that we have from Proto Stamps.
Bring the mug.
Proto Stamps.
Sit on the side.
And we can stamp
Do another one.
right into hot glass with these. So those are Pride of Southside stamps that we have from that event. These are some of the cool mugs that you would get an opportunity to purchase at that event. You can also make mugs, which is like, I think one of the only times we really offer that. So that happens in October. We are planning on having it on October 29th. So last year was the first time that we tried out a mug workshop, and it was a huge success. People had tons of fun. So if you missed signing up for that, I know it was super popular and a lot of people missed out on signing up for that. This is Prida's Southside Burnell that I'm talking about right now. So that one comes up in October. You get to come drink some beer, make a mug if you sign up for making a mug. And then you get to have that mug and drink out of it every day. I mean, that's such a cool item to have on your shelf. And then anytime anyone comes over, you can tell them about how you made a mug and you can serve them up a drink in it. That's pretty cool. So the team's collaborating and thinking about what colors to use. Are we making a mug with a handle?
Handle and some little fronts with stamps.
All right. Cool.
And also in the handle.
Oh yeah. So we're gonna make a mug that has, Clifton said it's a little print, which is like kind of a little bit, and we're gonna stamp into that. So we're gonna gather some glass out of our 2100 degree furnace. Now the glass sits in this furnace pretty much year round, but during the summer it gets a little too hot to blow glass. So we shut it down and we repair it, and all the money that we raise from that ice cream social tends to help us with that. So tying back to that event I was just talking about, the ice cream social helps us out with repairs, with rebuilding, and all the other stuff we need to do to take care of the very expensive equipment that we run here. So remember that anytime you are purchasing one of the tickets to our events, you're picking out one of the bowls from our ice cream social, all of those funds help us raise money toward these programs, toward keeping us alive, basically.
Glass feels soft now? Yeah, compared to that. Yeah.
So I know a lot of you guys that are watching come and take classes here. And I know that a lot of you are super supportive of us. And I just want to take a moment to thank you. If you've come, hung out with us, you've taken a class with us, you've shared a video, you've purchased a bowl or a mug, you've come and done one of our workshops, or you know, you come into the gallery every so often and buy some gifts for your friends. Thank you so much for doing that. It's because of you guys that we still exist in this neighborhood. So Heidi has put the link to our Pride of Southside event up on the chat as well. So just remember, you guys, this is a cool opportunity to make a mug, which is something we don't offer at any other point during the year. So think about it. If you want to make a mug, even if you don't drink, and you just want a mug to drink some juice out of or water, that's a really cool item to be able to use every day. And it's something you made with your own hands, you know? Don't forget that you don't have to wait until those events to come take a class with us either. We offer classes year-round. So if you're thinking about coming in and blowing glass, we have a bunch of classes up on our website right now that you can sign up for. And if blowing glass isn't your thing, we offer flameworking and kiln forming as well. So if you're heat averse and you really don't want to get hot and sweaty, even though it's a lot of fun, you can always consider doing something in our kiln forming studio where you're not working with the glass hot directly at all. One of the cool things we've also started this, like during the pandemic, was these take it, make it kits, which are ways in which you can take the glass home, work with it at your leisure, and then bring it back. And we melt it into an object here. So that's something to consider if you're a little bit nervous about coming in for any reason. You can take a kit home and hang out with your family and make some cool glass objects. So there's lots of ways to get involved with us. So Clifton is doing some shaping. It's not quite a block, it's like a metal block. It's like
It's an old block.
yeah,
It's from the blocks.
but it's not a wooden block, it's a metal block. He's heating it up, and now he's got a little bubble in there, which is going to be the starting shape for our mug. What colors are those, Clifton?
It's an ivory and a red aurora.
Ivory and red aurora.
Might give it a little twist at the bottom.
Yeah. So for those of you thinking about those take and make it kits, Heidi's so good about putting links in the chat for us. So feel free to click on that, check that out. And peruse our website too. We've got tons of information on there. Almost anything you want to do. Glass related, of course, but almost anything glass related you might want to do. So don't forget, right now, if you're just tuning in, we are working on these mugs. Or a similar mug, not quite exactly the same. So these are the mugs that we have at our Pride of Southside. That happens in October. So we have it scheduled for October 29th, tentatively. And it's one of our fundraising events. So the money that we raise goes into our ACE fund, which helps us to contribute to our artistic mission, our civic mission, and education. So our ACE fund helps us to do a lot of programming around here. And almost anytime you make a donation, that money goes into that ACE fund. So you don't have to wait for one of our fundraising events to come in and hang out and put some money in our ice cream donation jar. You can also donate online. You can donate online, you can come into one of those fundraising events. If you happen to be by the gallery, look for our ice cream donation jar and pop a little money in there. There's so many ways to help us out. Ooh, one of the best parts about these events too, I always forget to mention the cool shirts that we have. So we do these cool shirts. Blake, you want to turn around,
Yeah.
show us the back of that? So that was our ice cream social shirt last year. Such a cool shirt. And they're unique for that event. So we switch them up every year. Every year you participate, you get to have one shirt for that year, for that event. So that's pretty awesome. I've got a shelf full of shirts now. And I wear them with pride. I especially wear my Pride of Southside shirt with pride. Just to make it a, just to make sorry. I'm just cracking myself up over here. Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite parts about those events is I get a cool shirt. And the designs are always awesome. So Clifton is putting in this jack line. This is the constriction that's going to let us break the glass free from that blowpipe. It's almost like a guideline. So really the guideline is where we're going to drop a little water. Once we're ready, I'm going to chill that glass out and then break it free. We don't want to do that right now because we want this to turn into a mug. So if you've been watching for a little while, you saw us do this with the bowl. That bowl had a transfer move in there to safely switch it around. We're going to do that again with this mug. I believe. Depends on, yes, we are going to do that with this mug. Are we putting a cookie foot on the bottom of this mug? No, right?
What?
Is there going to be a cookie foot on this mug?
Cookie foot?
Cookie foot?
I've got some glass in here.
Okay. All right, I'll get to your way. Woo. All right. So you guys don't forget, we do these demonstrations on the second Friday of every month. You can come watch in person too if you're local. So we're located on Magnolia Avenue in Fort Worth. The weather's nice right now to come hang out by the fire. And then of course we do these live streams too, so you can always join us online. Now Heidi's got a text you can send to help support us. So if you are interested in donating, you can text Open Studios to 44321, and that'll get you set up to make a donation to help us out. So this programming, we bring it to you free, but it certainly costs us a lot of money to do this. So please do, if you have a few extra dollars, consider donating to help out our programming, help our studio stay alive, help us fix our equipment, and help us keep our ACE fund alive. That's really one of our primary goals, is keeping our ACE fund alive, because it helps us with so many different things. So when you come into the gallery to make a donation, you're going to look for our ice cream jar, which is this guy right here. We made this bomb pop last year. Oh, yeah. I'm not going to be able to turn the camera down, but you can pop some money into there when you come check us out in person. And that goes toward our ACE fund as well. Helps us to support our programming. Now Blake's got a nice hot bit of glass. They're gonna drop it onto the vessel, cut it off. And then Clifton is gonna use that stamp to pop on there. Woo! Pride of Southside.
You left plenty of that out.
Beautiful. All right. So the flat part you see right here is going to end up being the bottom of the cup. Blake is going to make a little punty by gathering a teeny tiny little bit of glass on the end of that solid rod. He's going to shape it up on the Marver into something like a little bit of a Q-tip shape. Pushing a lot of that glass back, shaping it up. And then we're going to stick that rod to the bottom of the cup. And that's going to allow us to shape up the other side. So right now what Clifton's got is a closed off bubble with a flat bottom. But we can't drink out of something like that. So we got to flip it around and open it up. So we make sure that punty is nice and centered. Drop a tiny little drop of water on that jack line that we made earlier. And with a little tap, it comes free. And then we're able to change the shape of the vessel. Pretty awesome process. If you guys have been watching, you saw us do this with the Bullseye vessels we did earlier. We did it with that bowl.
So we'll just do a regular old handle, and then we'll put a little thumb crimp on the top of the handle. We'll use that stand.
So Clifton is planning on putting a handle on this vessel, and then he's going to put a little thumb print to kind of hold, so when you're holding the handle you have a nice spot to rest your thumb. So you guys, if you have never done this before, if you've never come out, taken a glass class with us, highly, highly encourage you to do so. We are the only public access studio in Fort Worth that I know of. And this is such a cool spot because you can learn how to blow glass, you can hang out with the team, you can come watch these demonstrations, come hang out with us on our fundraising events. And then, after a few classes, you can even rent the studio. So, something to consider if you're looking to pick up a new hobby in the new year. I know you guys are all setting goals for yourselves. Maybe some New Year's resolutions. So hopefully picking up a hobby is on that list, because this is a cool hobby to pick up. I'm pretty sure everyone in this room would agree with me that it's very addictive as well. One of the best parts about this is we've got something for almost everyone. So if you are a little heat averse, we've got something for you in the kiln studio. If you like the heat, but you want to work a little smaller scale, maybe making jewelry or something like that, we do have a flameworking studio as well. Lots and lots of ways to get involved with glass. So Blake is getting ready to make a handle. Are we making a handle? Yeah. Yeah. All right. So for those of you lefties out there, Clifton's making a Lefty Mug, which we know you guys do struggle with being in a right-handed world. So this is going to be a left-handed mug, so that when you're holding the handle in your left hand, the Pride is Outside logo is going to be facing you. Wait, is it going to be facing you or is it going to be facing out? What's the correct way?
That's the unknown etiquette.
Is a mug's print supposed to face out from you? Or is it for you? I don't know. Got it. It's supposed to face the viewer. All right, got it. So it's supposed to face out. All right. So Blake's got a nice juicy heat on this handle bit. Clifton's gonna cut it at the length he wants or close to the length, and then he's gonna flip the cup around to keep it nice and straight. And when he's ready, he's gonna flip it back to make a handle. We gotta do a little fine tuning to make sure that shape is nice. And then giving it a little heat to get that handle to stick on properly so it doesn't pop off. Ooh, what color is that?
Reddish Aurora.
Yeah, that looks good. That's the same color that's in the cup,
Yes.
so it should look really nice. Beautiful. Yeah, that looks so good. So Clifton's doing a couple of final shaping moves. Sorry guys, we cut out there for a sec. But yes, glass is a good way to relieve your stress because you can't focus on anything else while you're doing it. So thanks Vernell for bringing that up because that is accurate. Hey, that's a cool mug.
Good looking mug.
Oh,
Come to the
yeah.
event. Lefty.
So we're gonna knock it off just by giving it a little tap. And then the bottom is gonna get a little heat. Fire polishing it with a torch. And that's gonna smooth out any sharp points that we might have on the bottom there. Now Blake has got these grabbers. And the mug's gonna go into, it's gonna go into an annealer to cool down overnight so that it doesn't crack. Nice job, you guys. Very awesome. So guys, don't forget, those were two of the items that relate to a couple of our fundraising events. The Pride of Southside, which happens in October. And our ice cream social, which is what we showed earlier today. Once we're done live streaming, you can go back and check out that bowl if you missed it. You can also go back and check out the Bullseye roll-ups we did today, if you missed that. Thanks, Clifton.
Yeah.
Do you have any last words?
Absolutely. Thanks, Gene, so much. Thank you all for joining us for the January edition of Cynical Studios Open Studios Night. Come and see us. All right, come take a class. Come engage with this material. Let us inform you about it all and hopefully inspire you to live a better life. But thank you guys so much. Thank you to the team. Y'all have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Clifton. Thanks, you guys. See you all next time.